So after our, well, recent election, I say new, but it's becoming less and less new as time moves on. But after our most recent general election, a lot of people from all sides of the political spectrum were calling for PR, that it's time that we looked at PR and that we decide what to do about it. Now, I've said before, Labour for PR have done a fantastic job raising awareness, why we need to change, how we could change, and the various systems that we could go for. But I think it's time we need to make a decision. I've done a video about this before, that we need to go, okay, this is the version of PR we're gonna go for. So I've said before, I think it's a single transferable vote. I think that would probably be, my preferred version. I know, again, there are others, but for me, single transferable vote, I think makes the most sense. Definitely, I think is probably the best one for the UK as well, because everyone claims, and again, I use air quotes, claims they want to keep their MPs. But remember, we live in a very, very much a time where if you went out to any town, any region, or city and went, "Who's your MP?" People don't know. Like, more often than not, people do not know who their MP is. So this whole claim, which you see very often deployed against, "Oh, we can't go to PR for this reason because people want to keep their MP link." Most people do not know who their MP is. So yeah, there are obviously other arguments, against this and so forth. And I think putting pressure on the government to go for PR, to really push that forward, for it to be a bigger, um, you know, not only just push from the Labour Party, but all parties. In fact, there is an all parliamentary group of, I think, 20 MPs, which we'll be talking about as well in a bit, pushing for this as well. But we've also got now Andy Burnham, like one of Labour's leading mayors in the region of the UK. And I've said this plenty of times before, I think potential future Labour leader. Would not shock me to see him in a couple of years make that transition from being the regional mayor to being an MP to becoming somewhat of a big political mover and shaker within the Labour Party. Andy Burnham is very, very progressive. He's done a very, very good job as the Labour mayor for the Manchester City region. I think he's done very good, very, very good job, especially when it comes to buses. He's led a lot on a ton of different things, but him now saying this, calling for this, adds yet more pressure. And we've said it multiple times on this channel and elsewhere. PR's time has come. It is about time that we looked into this. And Andy Burnham, I think here, the comments he made at Labour Fringe event, I think do set up a good path of progression for us to get into PR. So before we go talking about what he said, please remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, click on the share, subscribe, the Patreon, buy me a coffee link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, as always, click on the like just for extra measure. And of course, let's crack on into today's story coming from the Byline Times, leading on Andy's comments that he made on this. So, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham have now urged MPM Keir Starmer's government to launch a review of the first past voting system used for the Westminster elections. And I think having a review of first past the post, good starting point, because once again, keeps that conversation going. Keeps the conversation going, keeps it more relevant, and really, once again, puts pressure on to do a lot more of this stuff. So, speaking at a fringe event at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, the Mayor of Greater Manchester said, "I appreciate that they're probably not ready to go out there to commit to a big change, but why not launch a review of the voting system for the House of Commons? And why not carefully consider whether proportional representation has the support of the country to bring it forward. Can't disagree. I can't disagree with that comment. I think that would be a perfect way to go about it. But as I've said before, not just House of Commons, House of Lords as well. We should also really consider House of Lords reform as well. I don't think there should be, an either or thing. I think they should be done very, very much at the same time. But if we can't do the Commons, the Lords, oh boy, like the amount of support and cross-parliamentary support and you know support to change the House of Lords, huge. It's like would be the easiest win ever because everyone wants to reform the Lords, but no one's actually gone out and said, well, actually, this is how we could reform it. I've talked about this before in the past. So at the very same Labour event for the New Democracy event on Sunday night, Professor Rob Ford of the University of Manchester also agreed, arguing that ongoing volatility in British politics means that Labour may be forced to act on electoral reform now in the coming years. He told delegates, the strategic argument is that it is in Labour's interest now to embrace the discussion about electoral reform now because it is better for them to make the running and own this issue than be bounced into it just 5 years down the line, when they may well be faced with a situation where the price for continuing support is electoral reform. That's very true. There's been talks about this, about what may happen potentially at the next election, might be a hung parliament. So this conversation needs to happen. And I agree with Andy Burnham that having a review of the voting system for the House of Lords and looking at, is there, support for the country to bring it forward? I absolutely think there is. Absolutely think there is. We've looked at, countless polls and etc. opinion pieces over the time calling for this. Its time has come. Its time has really, really come. So that, I think, is a perfect start to it. Also agree with what the professor said here as well. Own the conversation, push it forward now. Don't be bounced into it because you don't know, you don't want to be rushed into it when you can be forming the narrative of saying how we're going to sort of do this, which direction are we going to do. And I think it should be something we really do think about before we actually go and implement it, about how we intend to do it, what it's going to look like, what is the electoral map going to look like as well in that as well. So very, very much well worth sitting down and looking at it and having that conversation now where you've got the room and space to have that conversation. I think Labour do need to have that. Anyway, this continues. So far, the Labour leadership has resisted calls from local parties, members, and even trade unions and at the annual conference to replace first past the post with proportional voting system. I don't think they can for much longer. I think when it has so much support, continuing to ignore it does not continue to make much sense. It does not continue to make much sense. And sooner or later, you will not be able to ignore it. I've always been a big advocate, being within the party, pushing, support of particular policies or things like that. That's how you sort of, move this stuff along. And now that is just such a big momentum, has such support, even the leadership cannot deny that there are calls for this going on, that there are stuff wanting to sort of happen along this way. And it is only just a matter of time before I think even the leadership has to admit, well, maybe this is something we need to look into. Hence why I agree with Andy Burnham's comments. Launch a review into first past the voting system. It must makes perfect sense. So Andy Burnham has been now one of the most vocal supporters in the party of the shift to proportional representation. But the Manchester Mayor's comments will nevertheless also add pressure from the grassroots of the party. So Anne Dixon, the Labour MP for Shipley, who chaired the event, revealed that she had joined the all-new parliamentary group called For Fairer Elections. Recently elected, the Labour MP for St Austell and Newquay, Noah Law, also planned to join the group, which is chaired by Labour's Alex Sobel. Again, Once again, an all-party group shows there is support for voting reform across all parties. Its time has more than enough come. I'm going to be repeating that phrase a lot, but you can see it clearly on here. So, with the all-new parliamentary group, we'll now campaign in Parliament for proportional representation, as well as measures to eliminate dark money and very malicious disinformation in politics. Again, completely agree on that. Anna Dixon, also an MP, said, some people may wonder why a Labour Party that has just won on the basis of the current first-past-the-post system would want to open the debate again about PR. They are the principled and pragmatic reasons why Labour has moved so strongly in favour of PR in recent years. Caroline Osborne for the campaign group Labour for a New Democracy said, this is about restoring trust in our political system, and it would be incredibly powerful to be able to say to voters for the first time, everyone will really have a vote that counts. It is also about making sure the legacy of this government is stable, a renewed Britain. If we can win in a landslide majority with just 1/3 of the vote, so too can other parties. Keeping this system in place is now a reckless gamble with the country's future. Again, agree more than enough completely. More than enough completely. And you see massive voter, just people not turning out to vote. It's been a constant problem. I always make this case countless times, especially when it comes to local elections. You can win a local election on 100 votes. A local election, that's nothing. That's nothing. With turnout for local elections at the national average is at like 20, 26, 25%. I think might be 27, and getting smaller every time because people care less and less about voting in local elections, unfortunately, when they really should care more about that. But again, frustration, definite frustration there on a lot of stuff. But that is something we really should definitely be focused on. And keeping sort of people engaged with politics. So definitely changing the voting system, not only just for this as well, but maybe even looking at what this means for local politics as well. Should this also change for who becomes local councillor, mayors, etc. as well? So the most recent general election, it continues, has been branded the most distorted in British history by the group Make Votes Matter. Labour won a historic majority with seats despite receiving just 1/3 of the votes cast. Again, that's how you win this, our election. It is the number of seats that you win, not really the votes cast. Which again is well worth reminding to a lot of people. But anyway, at the very same time, only 1 in 5 people actually either voted for either the Greens or Reform, yet these parties just share 1% of MPs between them, 9 out of 650. Labour's official programme does recognise that the flaws in the current voting system are contributed to very much distrust and alienation we see in politics. However, the manifesto was silent on the voting system, and last April, the Byline Times did reveal Keir Starmer was against a shift to PR. Keir Starmer has appeared to rule out moving to proportional representations for the Westminster voting during the general election campaign, but after being elected, the now PM said the fight for trust is now the battle of one that defines our age. This June, Professor John Curtis and the National Centre for Research found that just trust in British politics and elections has fallen now to a record low, while proposals to change the voting system command a record majority, now running at 54% according to YouGov. So it's time. It's generally time. And people like Andy Burnham speaking out, put more pressure on this. It is just now a matter of time. But we keep pressure, we keep pushing for this, and it will happen. I always tell the story. Labour for PR started being laughed at, saying you will never achieve anything. And yet here they are now with all this pressure that they have very much created in many reasons. They are partly responsible for a lot of this stuff. of getting Labour to this point of having such grassroots pressure within the movement and getting more MPs on side to say, hey, look, we need to look at PR. So, yeah. It is, of course, I think, probably one of the defining moments we will see when we do change this. It will radically alter the landscape of British politics. It will keep the Tories out of power. They will have to fundamentally change themselves in order to survive in this new in that new PR landscape. Obviously, it will be the biggest opponents of PR. I can guarantee you. And of course, one thing we should guarantee is that we make it as difficult as possible to change the rules for PR. Because if, let's say, I don't know, Tories or other party gets in and they try, changing the rules to, suit them, probably something we need to make sure they can't do very easily. So that's why I said at the beginning, something we really need to sort of think about this, have this conversation where we have the time to have this conversation and actually really think about what moving to PR means, what types of PR out there, and what is going to be the best for the UK going forward. That is a conversation we should be having now. And I think those are the conversations we should be really having because everyone recognizes the fact we need and should be probably going towards PR. But we need to actually start having the next part of the conversation, I think, in some cases. But as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.